The rerun of the Murder on the Warp Express event has begun in Limbus company. With it returned a familiar boss, came great amounts of rewards, and crucially, a brand new banner featuring two identities. The identities in question are the Prince of Manchaland Meursault and Warp Corp Heathcliff. And today we'll be looking at the former, and we'll save Heathcliff for later. Prince Meursault is our brand new Manchaland bloodfiend, adding life to a faction we haven't seen for almost a year now. This unit synergizes with other members of his family, provides buffs, inflicts a lot of bleed, and honestly does a lot more. But just how strong is he? Today I want to answer that question. To do that, we'll first look at Meursault's kit, and then we'll look at his performance in the bleed team, taking note of all the things he can provide for his allies. And we'll end off with whether you should get him. But before we start, let me remind you that most of my viewers are not subscribed. So if you find yourself coming back to my videos or end up enjoying this one, consider subscribing. It helps me out a lot. Without further ado, let's get to the prince. We'll begin with his kit. Meursault has high health, high speed, and a high defense level. His sin affinity spread consists of envy, pride, and lust, with a lust defense. His first skill is March Conductor. It has 3 coins, rolls up to 15, gains coin and final power from bleed potency and count, and consumes up to 10 Blood Fist to apply 1 Hard Blood armor for every 5 Blood Fist consumed to himself and the lowest HP ally. This effect, as well as all Hard Blood armor application, prioritizes higher Manchaland kindreds over other allies. The applied armor is increased by 1 for Manchaland units, and failing to consume Blood Fist inflicts Meursault with 10 bleed. The coins of the skill inflict bleed potency and count, as well as 1 rupture. His second skill is Responsibility to Rebuild. It has 2 coins, rolls up to 22, and has the exact same Blood Fist to Hard Blood armor conversion effect, but targets the highest HP ally now. It gains coin and final power from bleed potency and count, and deals more damage based on Hard Blood armor on self. The coins of the skill inflict a good amount of bleed and rupture, as well as lust fragility next turn. Meursault's skill 3 comes in 2 forms. The first one is this. It has 4 coins, rolls up to 24, heals Meursault for part of the damage it deals extra damage based on bleed count, and gains extra coin power based on potency, applies Hard Blood armor on allies for free, only requiring resonance, and if the resonance was lust, gives extra armor to the lowest HP allies. After attack, if the skill kills the enemy, it gives extra Blood Fist. The coins of the skill inflict a good amount of bleed and rupture, as well as 2 stacks of La Mancha Parade, an effect we'll get to later. At 5 Hard Blood armor, Meursault's skill 3 transforms into Overture. This skill has 3 weight, heals even more than the base skill 3, but gets clash power instead of coin power. It deals extra damage in the same way as the base skill 3 and applies Hard Blood armor to allies based on resonance, but applies a lot more of it than skill 3-1. After attack, all armor is consumed, and Blood Fist is increased for every enemy defeated. The coins of the skill inflict a lot of bleed, some rupture, and a good amount of La Mancha Parade stacks. Additionally, Meursault gains Hard Blood armor for every enemy staggered, defeated, or part broken by the skill's damage, up to 3. As for the prince's defensive skill, he has a clashable counter. The skill applies bleed on allies and activates it, though this effect does not work on higher kindred bloodfiends. On Clash Win, it gives Meursault Hard Blood armor, and the coins of the skill inflict 2 bleed. As for Meursault's passive, he has 3. The first one is the basic Bloodfist passive that all bloodfiends have. The second one gives Manchaland identities with 5 Hard Blood armor focused performance at turn start. It also allows Meursault to bypass stagger once per encounter. Also, if Princess Rodion is on the field, the third skill of both her and Meursault deal 15% more damage. This applies to skills 3-2 as well. Meursault's third passive requires 3 Pride and 3 Lust owned to activate, and it gives Meursault offense and defense level up, as well as haste based on his Hard Blood armor stack. At combat start, if the prince has focused performance, he inflicts 1 La Mancha Parade on hit, up to 2 times per turn. Also, if Meursault is under 30% HP, he heals 30% of his HP when hitting an enemy with bleed, once per encounter. As for Meursault's support passive, it requires 5 Last Resonance and multiplies Bloodfist generation by 1.5 times for the turn. This effect can activate twice per encounter. This is it for the Princess kit, but he's got a bunch of new effects, so let's look at those before moving on to how to use him and how good he is. The first effect he provides for himself and his team is Hard Blood armor. Armor stacks to 5 and allows the ally to heal 10% of the damage they deal if they're not at full HP. After attack, if the ally dealt damage, the effect loses 1 stack. However, if a Last Resonance was activated during the turn, the healing gets halved, but the stack does not get reduced, allowing you to get more of it. The second effect is gained when a Manchaland ally has 5 Hard Blood armor, and the effect is focused performance. Performance stacks up to 3 and allows Manchaland allies to gain 1 final power and up to 15% more damage on their first and second skills, with the buffs being doubled for their third. A stack of this effect is lost after you use a skill 3 or if at turn start the afflicted ally does not have Hard Blood armor. The final new effect is La Mancha Parade. It stacks up to 4 and makes the afflicted enemy take 10% more damage from last skills and 20% more damage from skills of any affinity if the attacker is a Manchaland identity. Also, at 4 stacks, the effect makes the enemy deal 20% less damage to Manchaland identities. 1 stack of the effect is lost whenever the enemy is hit or when that enemy hits an ally. Okay, now we're familiar with everything Meursault's kit has. This means we can move on to using him and analyzing his performance in the Bleed team. First of all, what does he bring to the team? Well, a lot. Prince Meursault is a multifaceted identity, bringing value of all kinds. First of all, his bleed infliction. His first skill inflicts 1 count, and his skills 2 and 3 inflict 2, for a total of 9 count per rotation. This is equal to that of Ringy Sung without his random 1 in 5 chances, so you know it's good count. On top of this good count, Meursault gets average potency, so his bleed infliction is good overall. He also has Rupture, but that is there just so you can run him on Mirror Dungeon hybrid teams, so it's not exactly an integral part of his kit. Next up, Meursault's buffs and debuffs. The prince increases the healing of his allies via Hard Blood armor, improving their survivability. The bloodfiends can all already heal, so this is not particularly impactful. But hey, some extra healing is better than no healing, as long as the rest of the ID is good, right? Focused performance is the offensive buff that Meursault gives to his allies. It takes a couple turns to wind up, with you being required to get 5 armor stacks and then to wait for performance to reach 3 stacks of its own. But the damage buff you get at its peak is very strong, with this effect being given away to 3 other IDs on the team with good damage. The impact it has on your efficiency is unmistakable. In addition to the nice buff, Meursault effectively has 2 sources of last fragility, with the second one turning into too fragile when the target is being attacked by a Manchaland bloodfiend. Oh, and on top of that, extra 15% to Princess Rodia's skill 3. Because why not? Yeah, the offensive boosts Meursault provides are awesome, making him one of the best support identities in the game. But this isn't all for his value. The prince's own damage is quite high, as he himself can make use of performance and fragility that he inflicts, while also getting extra offense levels from his passive. With all of these effects, and the free 15% buff again applied, the damage that Meursault can deal becomes very respectable against a single target, putting him not far behind other meta bleed identities. But once he gets to utilize his AoE, be it on a group of enemies or a multi-part boss, his damage per rotation skyrockets, allowing the prince to compete with many other units you would consider great damage dealers, while retaining all of that incredible utility that he has. Finally, there are 2 more factors that make this ID really good. His Sin Spread is great for the bleed team, as it helps with fueling Sanguine Desire and Yearning Manchaland Meursault. And by this point you should be able to guess that the second extra factor is his Season 5 WoW Ego, which is a very powerful skill that deals a bunch of damage and inflicts a very potent effect. So yeah, Prince Meursault does a lot of things at once, and he does those things very well, which is why I am very much in support of putting him on the bleed team. But how do you maximize his value? Well, first of all, the obvious thing to do is to build a team that's good for him, or rather, put him into a good team that allows him to maximize his value as well. A team like that would, of course, feature his bloodfiend allies, who greatly benefit from his effects. This doesn't mean just slapping every bloodfiend on the team at once, but that is a topic for the eventual remastered bleed team guide. What you need to know is that running Prince without the other bloodfiends is effectively shooting yourself in the foot. Now, as for his actions on the field, it's pretty simple. You spend Meursault's initial turns building up resources for passives and ego skills, and if possible, you secure some early stacks of hard blood armor, as the prince's skills require very little blood fist. Once you get Overture, you can use Overture, though do note that waiting for an extra turn before using his skill 3 can provide extra damage via focused performance, though the damage difference isn't that great unless you're making use of his AoE. And while Meursault's own gameplay loop is pretty cut and dry, it's important to remember his buffs need to be cared for by the other members of the team. Hard blood armor drops stacks normally, meaning it kills your ability to gain focused performance. To combat this, you want at least 2 last skills to be used every turn, as that will allow hard blood armor to retain its stack, giving you access to the potent damage buff. Now, this might sound like a unique important piece of microcontrol in a vacuum, but in reality, the bleed team already operated like this before Meursault. The Kurokumo duo, Barber Outis and Meursault all have last resonance passives that must be activated in order to let those units reach their peak levels of performance. This means that Hard Blood armor upkeep doesn't really put extra strain on your last skills, but instead directly synergizes with the already established play pattern of the Bleed team. As such, getting focused performance is quite easy. And speaking of performance, that effect requires a bit of thinking as well, as the damage it provides scales up with the stack, but using a skill 3, for which the buffs are doubled, lowers the stack. It doesn't take a genius to figure out that you get more value on your biggest skills if you just wait to get 3 stacks of performance before using them. That being said, it can often be beneficial to unleash a powerful skill earlier, so don't let the stack of this effect fully dictate your timings. As for La Mancha Parade, it's just fragility that runs out mid-turn. But don't let the enemy hit you while the effect is on them, because you'll be losing a stack without getting value out of it. The last thing to keep in mind while running Meursault is, of course, his WoW ego skill. This is another thing I'll go more in depth on in my eventual Bleed video. But you have to remember that your name Manchaland Meursault exists. Deals good damage by proccing Bleed a lot and inflicts a potent debuff in Rose Wedge, which increases the amount of bleed inflicted on the target enemy. And honestly, this is about it for Meursault. The Prince is an extremely powerful identity, who I personally would rank as the 5th best bleed identity in the game. And on top of that, he's not hard to play. You can boil down his entire loop to spamming skills at random while the rest of his team secures last resonance. And that would not be far from the truth. Usually I point out weaknesses in the kits of identities, and often I rip into units that struggle with anything at all. But this time around, there's genuinely nothing to complain about. The Prince of La Manchaland is an incredible unit, and if you're planning on sharding a bloodfiend bleed team in the next season, or if you already have the bloodfiends, getting this guy is a must. Don't pull for him though, craft him instead. The next Walpurgisnacht is coming soon. And yeah, that's about it. If you disagree or have something to add, feel free to leave a comment below, and I might read it and respond. If you enjoyed the video at any point, leave a like to let me know, and if you want to see more like this, consider subscribing. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you again soon. Goodbye!